Did Elizabeth Taylor's whirlwind marriages reveal true love, or was it something deeper? Elizabeth Taylor's love life is as legendary as her acting career. Known for her striking beauty and unforgettable performances, Taylor's personal life was often just as captivating, especially when it came to her 8 marriages. But what really happened behind the scenes? Were these marriages driven by passion and genuine love, or was there something more complex at play? In this video, we'll dive into her love life, exploring her many marriages, the ups and downs, and the intriguing relationships that define her. Get ready to uncover the story behind one of Hollywood's most iconic women. Elizabeth Taylor's first marriage was to Conrad Hilton, heir to the Hilton hotel empire. At just 18 years old, she was swept off her feet by the charm and wealth of Hilton, a man much older than her. It seemed like a fairy tale, an actress marrying into one of the wealthiest families in the world. But was it true love, or was Elizabeth simply looking for security in the midst of her rapidly growing fame? When Elizabeth and Conrad tied the knot in May of 1950, it was a glamorous affair. But behind the fairy tale wedding, the cracks began to show almost immediately. Hilton, who was emotionally distant and more focused on his business empire than his young wife, struggled to give Elizabeth the attention and affection she craved. This emotional disconnect didn't take long to create tension between them. Their marriage was short-lived, only about 9 months. Conrad's frequent absences and lack of emotional intimacy left Elizabeth feeling isolated and unimportant. She soon realized that the glittering life of wealth and status couldn't make up for the absence of love and connection. This left her wondering, could a marriage built on material wealth offer the kind of love she sought? After their split, Elizabeth reflected on how superficial the marriage had been. Conrad's emotional unavailability and the pressures of living in the public eye eventually led her to the realization that real love could never be built on wealth alone. Her journey into the world of marriage had just begun, but the lesson she learned from her first marriage would stay with her throughout the rest of her life. After the heartbreak of her first marriage to Conrad Hilton, Elizabeth Taylor moved on to her second husband, British actor Michael Wilding. They were married in 1952 when Elizabeth was just 20 years old, and Wilding at 39 was much older than her. Unlike Hilton, Wilding was more emotionally available and supportive, and their marriage seemed to offer Elizabeth the stability she craved after the turbulence of her first union. Wilding, an established actor, was known for his calm demeanor, and he was a stark contrast to the drama and whirlwind of Elizabeth's Hollywood career. He wasn't part of the high society world she had married into Conrad, but he offered her something different: normalcy. They had 2 children together and enjoyed a few relatively peaceful years. But as the marriage continued, cracks began to appear once again. Wilding's calm and reserved nature sometimes seemed too distant for Elizabeth, who was used to more dramatic emotions and passionate connections. She might have longed for the excitement and intense passion she had felt with Conrad, but Michael didn't provide that same spark. There were also whispers that Elizabeth was still searching for something that Michael, despite being a good husband, just couldn't fulfill. Was she truly in love with him? Or was she simply seeking comfort and stability in a marriage that lacked the intensity she craved? As their marriage progressed, Elizabeth's career continued to skyrocket. Wilding, however, struggled with his sense of self-worth, possibly feeling overshadowed by his wife's fame. This growing tension would ultimately lead to their divorce in 1957, just 5 years into their marriage. In the end, Elizabeth and Michael's marriage was an example of how stability alone wasn't enough for someone like her, who craved more passion, excitement, and connection. She learned that even with a good, kind man by her side, she still felt something was missing, something that would continue to elude her in future marriages. After her divorce from Michael Wilding, Elizabeth Taylor's love life took a dramatic turn when she met film producer Mike Todd. Their connection was immediate and intense. Todd, known for his larger-than-life personality and successful career, was the kind of man who could keep up with Elizabeth's fiery spirit. He was charismatic, ambitious, and had a magnetic presence that drew people in. And it was no different with Elizabeth. They were married in 1957, just a few months after her split from Wilding, and their whirlwind romance captivated the public. To many, it seemed like Elizabeth had finally found the man of her dreams. Mike Todd was everything Conrad Hilton and Michael Wilding were not: vibrant, daring, and passionate. They appeared inseparable, and their love story quickly became the talk of Hollywood. But was this real love? Or was Elizabeth swept away by an obsession for a relationship that matched her passion and intensity? It's easy to see how someone like Elizabeth, who had endured so much heartache and disappointment, could be drawn to Mike Todd's confidence and vitality. She found in him a partner who didn't just match her energy but amplified it. They shared a whirlwind romance that many believed was destined to last. But this passionate relationship was tragically cut short. In 1958, just 1 year after they married, Mike Todd died in a plane crash while on a business trip. Elizabeth was devastated. She had found a man who seemed to understand her, someone who ignited a spark of real passion in her life. And suddenly, he was gone. The loss left her shattered, and her grief was so public that the world watched as she struggled to cope with the untimely death of her second husband. Mike Todd's death marked a turning point in Elizabeth's life. She had tasted what it was like to be truly in love, and yet that love was snatched away so quickly. This would haunt Elizabeth for many years to come, as she struggled to find that same level of connection again in her subsequent marriages. After the devastating loss of Mike Todd, Elizabeth Taylor's heart was broken, but the pain didn't keep her away from the spotlight for long. Enter Eddie Fisher, a popular singer known for his charm and good looks. The twist? Eddie was not only a close friend of Elizabeth's, but he was also the husband of her best friend, actress Debbie Reynolds. Their relationship began amid a public scandal that rocked Hollywood. After Mike Todd's tragic death, Eddie, who had been there for Elizabeth during her mourning, quickly became her source of comfort. His emotional support seemed to fill the void left by Todd's passing. Eddie's kindness and attention gave Elizabeth the reassurance she needed, and before long they were in a full-blown affair. The betrayal of Debbie Reynolds, Eddie's wife, shocked the public, and soon Elizabeth and Eddie were married in 1959. This marriage, however, was anything but smooth. Despite the whirlwind romance, Elizabeth's relationship with Eddie was marked by a sense of instability and tension. Eddie was known to be kind and caring, but he was also often described as weak and dependent, especially compared to Elizabeth's more dominant personality. Was this the type of partnership Elizabeth truly needed, or was it simply a reaction to the void Mike Todd had left in her life? The affair, the marriage, and the subsequent divorce became one of Hollywood's most talked-about scandals. It highlighted Elizabeth's tendency to fall into relationships where she sought comfort in familiar faces, but perhaps not in the right partners. Eddie Fisher, despite his love and care for Elizabeth, wasn't able to provide the emotional depth or strength she needed. Their marriage was a reminder that sometimes, even when love is present, the relationship can still falter if both parties are not equally fulfilled. If Elizabeth Taylor's love life had already been filled with drama, it reached its peak with her fifth marriage to Richard Burton. The story of Elizabeth and Richard is one of the most famous and tumultuous love stories in Hollywood history. Their relationship was nothing short of explosive, both on screen and off. Elizabeth and Richard first met in 1962 while filming the epic film Cleopatra. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and their fiery romance quickly became the talk of the town. What started as an affair during the filming of Cleopatra quickly turned into a passionate whirlwind love affair that set Hollywood on fire. Richard Burton was a celebrated actor known for his sharp wit and charm, but he also had a darker, more troubled side that matched Elizabeth's intensity. Both were larger-than-life personalities, and their relationship was filled with immense passion and just as much drama. They married in 1964, just 2 years after they first met. Their relationship was far from easy, and it quickly became evident that their connection was both magnetic and destructive. They fought as fiercely as they loved, with heated arguments and reconciliations that kept the press and the public fascinated. Elizabeth had never experienced a love like this before. Intense, fiery, and all-consuming. But was this love? Or was it an obsession? The line between the two is often blurred. Their passion was undeniable, but so was the turmoil. Elizabeth had once said, "The most exciting thing in my life has been Richard," and in many ways it seemed like their love was a powerful, almost obsessive force. Their emotional highs and lows, their fights, their reconciliations, all of it spoke to a relationship that was more about need and dependency than simple love. The back-and-forth nature of their relationship left many questioning whether their love was truly meant to last, or if it was a toxic obsession that both of them fed into. Despite their intense love for each other, their marriage was plagued by infidelity, jealousy, and emotional instability. In the end, their love story left a lasting impact on both of their lives, but it ultimately couldn't withstand the damage caused by their own emotions. After the tumultuous, all-consuming relationship with Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor's next marriage took a very different turn. In 1976, she married John Warner, a U.S. Senator from Virginia. This time, the public was surprised. Unlike her previous husbands, Warner wasn't a Hollywood star or a dramatic figure. He was a serious politician with a calm, reserved demeanor. The marriage seemed to represent a shift in Elizabeth's search for love, a move toward stability and away from the chaos of her past. John Warner was a man of respect, with a dignified presence that contrasted sharply with the larger-than-life personalities she had been married to before. At first, it appeared that Elizabeth was seeking a quiet, more private life away from the constant scrutiny of Hollywood and the drama that had characterized her previous marriages. They seemed like an unlikely couple, but for a time, they made it work. Elizabeth embraced a more subdued lifestyle, attending political events and living a less glamorous life than she had before. However, despite their apparent stability, this marriage, too, had its struggles. While John Warner was a good and supportive partner, the relationship lacked the passion that had characterized many of Elizabeth's earlier unions. Was this a sign that Elizabeth was finally seeking peace and tranquility after years of emotional turmoil? Or was she merely settling for something that didn't fully satisfy her? John Warner, despite being a good man and offering Elizabeth stability, couldn't provide her with the kind of passionate, all-consuming love that she had experienced in her earlier marriages. His quiet nature and the absence of emotional highs left Elizabeth yearning for something more. Their divorce marked yet another chapter in Elizabeth's ongoing search for love and fulfillment, a search that seemed never-ending. After her divorce from John Warner, Elizabeth Taylor's love life took another unexpected turn when she married construction worker Larry Fortensky in 1991. The age difference was vast. Elizabeth was 59 and Larry was 20 years her junior. But what made this marriage even more surprising was that Larry was not a famous actor, wealthy businessman, or even a well-known public figure. He was a man who had lived a relatively private life, and their relationship began unconventionally. They met while both were in rehab at the Betty Ford Center. Their marriage stood in stark contrast to all of Elizabeth's previous unions. By this point, she had lived through 6 marriages, and many had wondered if she would ever find true happiness. However, Elizabeth seemed to find solace and a sense of security with Larry, who, unlike her former husbands, was far removed from the world of fame and fortune. Their relationship, though unorthodox, appeared to give Elizabeth a sense of peace and simplicity. But was this love, or was Elizabeth once again looking for something to fill the void in her life? Something that she thought might be found in a quieter, simpler life, with someone who wasn't part of the Hollywood scene? Larry, for his part, seemed to be in awe of Elizabeth, but the relationship quickly revealed cracks. The vast age gap, their different backgrounds, and the public's constant scrutiny of their marriage created tension. Elizabeth, now older and more reflective, might have believed that this relationship would be the one that gave her lasting happiness. But could that truly happen when she was once again with someone so different from her previous partners? Elizabeth's divorce from Larry Fortensky marked the end of her series of marriages, and it was clear that this relationship, while loving in its way, was not enough to provide the deep emotional fulfillment she had spent her life searching for. The marriage had been an attempt to move away from the passion-driven relationships of her past, but the disconnect between them ultimately led to its downfall. Elizabeth's relationship with Larry was one of the quieter chapters in her love life, but it was still part of her journey, a journey filled with love, heartbreak, and the search for something deeper. Was it love or obsession? Elizabeth Taylor's marriages were more than just the stories of a Hollywood icon. They were a window into the complexity of love, longing, and emotional need. Throughout her life, Elizabeth was married a total of 8 times to 7 different men, each of whom represented a different chapter in her pursuit of love and happiness. But the question remains, was it truly love that she was after, or was she driven by something deeper? A need, an obsession, a longing that she could never fully satisfy? Each of Elizabeth's marriages seemed to follow a distinct pattern: the passionate highs of an intense romance, followed by the painful lows of heartbreak and loss. From her first marriage to Conrad Hilton, to her last with Larry Fortensky, Elizabeth searched for something that seemed just out of reach, always hoping that the next man would be the one to finally fulfill her emotional needs. Whether it was the tumultuous love affair with Richard Burton, the security of Michael Wilding, or the quiet life she sought with John Warner, Elizabeth's journey through love was marked by emotional highs and lows, with each relationship leaving its indelible mark on her. So, was it love or obsession? The answer, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. Elizabeth Taylor was undeniably capable of great love. She was a woman who loved deeply, fiercely, and with all of her heart. But her relationships also reveal a deep-seated longing, a desire to be loved, to be needed, and to find fulfillment in a world that often seemed as chaotic and unpredictable as her own emotional life. So, what do you think? Was Elizabeth Taylor truly in search of love, or was something else driving her decisions? Her story is one of passion, obsession, and unforgettable drama. If you enjoyed uncovering the mysteries of her marriages, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into Hollywood legends. Who knows what fascinating stories we'll explore next?